everyone for joining us for the Private Aviation Insider's Guide. And today I have a pilot who also shares my great state of Texas, Chris Lamont, joining me. Chris, welcome to the show today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I am so excited to finally see you face to face because we've done business with each other in the past and never actually met. So this was a brilliant idea to invite you to meet me after all these years. And I would love to talk to you today about the G100.
Of course. Yeah, we've had a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails with each other, but never actually been in the same physical presence. So this is kind of fun.
It is. I love that about aviation, that you can make such great connections with people and not meet them, or you can meet them in a random place. But anyway, nobody wants to hear about that. Let's talk about the G100. You bought this plane, gosh, a handful of years ago. And I'd love to hear first about what made you choose the G100 over some other aircraft that compete with that.
Yeah, we bought this airplane June 1st of 2015. It was the G100 that was for sale that was in Germany. So we went through the process of bringing it back from Germany. One of the reasons that we went with this airplane over like a G150 that we were looking at is because at the time it was half the price of a G150. And now it's, and for an equivalent airplane that had approximately the same amount of hours as a G150, it was half the price. Nowadays it's a third of the price now. And but has the same performance specifications.
Well, let's talk about those. What's the range? How high can it go? All the kinds of things that made you choose it.
Generally speaking, the airplane has a service. It has a service ceiling of 45,000. Generally speaking, it'll do 8.2 or 8.3 Mach at 460 to 465 knots at between 38 and 43,000 feet. We generally keep it between 38 and 41. That seems to be where it gets its best speed and has its best efficiency. So. And
the range?
I'm not one to ever slow down or fly at a maximum cruise, a maximum range setting. So we fly flat out all the time, 460 knots, and we can go 2,100 nautical miles without having to slow down. So
fantastic. We can get.
And just for example, an example of that would be from say Brenham to Guayaquil, Ecuador. So that's 2,100 miles.
Okay, good to know. And what's the mission that you typically fly in your G100? What range are you normally going?
We're normally in between the 1,000 and 1,500 mile range. So we'll go to Western Colorado. We'll go to Washington and Oregon. Sometimes we go to New York. We go out to the Bahamas. So we take the airplane on for the airplane, we take it on what I would consider easy missions. 1,000 or 1,500 nautical miles. We can make a 1,000-mile trip in just about 2 hours. So
fantastic. And then talk to me about the longest flight you've ever taken the aircraft on.
Yeah, longest flight was it was a series of flights that ended up in Tierra del Fuego, Argentina, which is very tip of South America. We left our home base of Brenham and went to Guayaquil, Ecuador, which was 5 hours and 5 minutes. We made a 45-minute turn and flew another 5 hours and 10 minutes to Santiago, Chile. So 10 hours and 15 minutes or so throughout a day. We spent 2 days there and then made another 4-hour flight to Tierra del Fuego. So.
Oh my goodness. And did you have fun there? Was it exciting being there?
It was interesting flying. I always like going to South America, and then going that far south was even interesting. We came home through Buenos Aires, so that was kind of like coming home through New York City, basically, just in the south. So it was a lot of fun.
And how did the plane perform on those long legs?
Just as advertised, really. We did not do anything special. We went at normal cruise flight. So we were 8.0 Mach or better. So that's 450 to 460 knots or better the whole way. The fuel burns are as advertised. The G100 does have an optional extension tanks in it, which carry an extra 650 pounds of fuel. So we had those in, and we still landed with plenty of reserve. So
you mentioned fuel burn here a couple of times. What is the typical fuel burn for hourly on the G100?
In gallons per hour, it's 220 to 240 gallons per hour.
Okay, great.
That's fairly equivalent to a lot of Learjets and stuff like that in the mid-size category that have 731 engines on them. So.
Perfect. Well, tell me a little bit about the pilot workload in the front. You came from a turboprop, if I remember right. Is that true?
Yeah, I've flown a few different turboprops, King Air 200, PC-12, King Air 350, and then this airplane. I flew this airplane for a previous employer also, so I have about 7 years of experience in the airplane now. The airplane has Collins Proline 4 in it, which is all glass panels, but just a later generation, has FMSs, which I actually prefer that over some of the newer stuff, some of the newer Garmin stuff, even some of the newer Collins stuff that you have to press a lot of buttons to make things happen. Proline 4 is fairly simple. It's easy go-to FMSs. So the pilot workload is not bad in the airplane. When I bring a new pilot into the airplane, it takes them a few minutes to get used to how fast the airplane accelerates and climbs. So that's fun though.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Tell me about the crew comfort in the cockpit and moving around in the cabin of the aircraft.
The airplane has big windows. And also it does have some overhead windows. So sometimes it does have a tendency to get hot in the cockpit because there's no zone control air conditioning. The air conditioning is for the whole cabin. It's just standard pilot seats. There is room up there to stretch your legs out, but there's nowhere to really go on the airplane except sitting in your seat. Unless you get up, go to the cabin, maybe have a coffee and stretch for a second. But now at the end of those 5-hour legs in the airplane, we were ready to get out of it. That's for sure.
I bet. And what about the passenger comfort? What do the passengers say about flying in the aircraft?
We like ours because we only ever fly it really with 2 people on board. It has accommodations for 9. But when you get above 4, in my opinion, it starts to get pretty cramped in the back. And it's just because above 4, there's 4 club seats in the back, so everybody sits comfortably in those 4 seats. One person would have to sit on the lavatory seat, 3 people would have to sit on a bench seat, and 1 other person gets another seat. So really, we only fly with 2 people, and they bring bags in the cabin. We always have plenty of luggage space. And they've never complained about having room to move around or sit.
And tell me about the luggage compartments on the aircraft. Inside, outside, no?
Outside, yeah, outside with no access to it. It's unpressurized, but it is climate controlled. It stays just above freezing, basically. And if you have like I said, the airplane has removable extension tanks in it. We leave our extension tanks in all the time, just for sake of not having to take them in and out. It takes a lot of time and effort to get them in and out. But doing that, we sacrifice half of our luggage space in the back. So with 2 people, normal luggage, we never have a problem. If we get over 4 people, then it starts to become a problem.
Good to know. Good to know. Talk to me about the maintenance on the aircraft. Do you feel like it's a maintenance hog or it's pretty reasonable as far as maintenance goes?
There are some of these early Astros, SPXs also, that can get to the maintenance hog situation that we all know of. But if you have one that's been taken care of, flown regularly, I don't think it's an issue. Our airplane has an APU in it, so that requires it to go to the shop once a year, basically. So it'll go every 12 months for less than a week. And then after that, basically it'll go every 250 hours. Everything's been fairly predictable on the airplane. And even I think reasonable. There are a few gotchas about it. The windshields are pretty expensive for the airplane, and they only last about 4 to 5 years.
More expensive than other airplanes, you think?
Yeah, from guys that I've talked to, they are. I mean, a new windshield for our airplane ranges from $70,000 to $75,000 per piece. You know, and there's 2 pieces in the front windshield, and in the mid-size category airplane like we're in, I hear that's on the higher side.
It is. It is. I would agree with that for sure.
But there are, you know, we've just experimented with a new process and took our windshield out that was delaminating, close to being needing replacing. And there was a company that said, hey, we can fix your windshield. If the windshield heat's not burn out, we can fix it, which I found hard to believe. I sent it to them. We got it back 5 days later, and the windshield looked absolutely brand new. So they had a process where they laminated the windshield back together and saved our $70,000 windshield for a sixth of the price, basically, and gave it a warranty, gave it an airworthiness certificate, and now we don't have to buy a new windshield. So there are processes like that are coming around for the airplane. There are a few other expensive parts, but they're starting to become alternates for these parts. So it's really not that big a deal. The whole time we've owned the airplane and talking to the owner about the future of the airplane, we've never been concerned about parts availability.
That is great to hear. What about dispatch reliability? Have you had any AOGs?
I've had one in 4 years. I believe the MBAA dispatch rate is like 94% for the airplane. Ours is up in the 99%. We got stuck one time because we had an electric indicator that was non-ME eligible, so we didn't have a choice. But now our airplane goes, knock on wood, every time. So.
Well, Chris, has there been anything that I haven't asked you about the airplane that would be helpful for people to know who are thinking about buying one?
I've recommended this airplane to other people that were looking. One of them has bought it. Another one bought an older, bigger Citation, not a 10, but a Citation that he does regret buying at this point because it's been expensive to bring it up to speed. I call it kind of the underrated airplane in the midsize category, even though it hasn't been manufactured for such a long time. The airplane still boasts some of the better efficiency in the category in terms of specific range. There's almost no other airplane in the midsize category that can go 0.3 nautical miles on a pound of fuel in terms of its efficiency. So a lot of people forget about those small numbers, and that's kind of getting in the weeds with it. But I think it's an underrated airplane for the price point that it can be bought at, for the performance that it gives you, the 2,000 nautical mile range, pretty much go anywhere in the United States, Canada, and South America without stopping. I think they're a pretty good buy at this point. And most of them are depreciated out, so you can get a pretty late model one for a decent price.
You should be getting bonus swag from Gulfstream for that, Chris. That was an amazing endorsement. Thank you so much for telling us about the G100 today. I appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.